Sorry.
Okay.
I'm not going to the
All
bathroom
right.
with you next time
Okay.
to hurry
The
that up.
Parks Committee will come to order, and let's have a roll call. Alder Steuer. I am here. Alder Eck.
I am present.
Alder Campbell.
Here.
All right, and Alder Weary. We are all present. Can I have an approval of the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Alder Eck, second by Alder Stevens to approve the agenda. Any changes?
Campbell.
I would like to
Campbell.
You said Stevens, but it's Steve
Stevens,
Campbell.
Campbell. That's all right, don't worry.
Got it.
He'll
We're off
make
to a
it.
wonderful start.
Yeah, anyway, I'd like to move number 2 up to number 1.
All right, there's a motion by Alder Steuer to move number 2 first. Is there a second to that? Is that all right with the committee? All right.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, so we will go 2, then 1.
Can I clarify? Instead of approving the agenda, you want to actually modify the
To
agenda.
modify the agenda.
That
So
is,
we're not
so
approving?
We didn't
we're,
really take a
Well,
vote on that
we
one
didn't-
yet.
we didn't
The,
vote.
Okay, so
we're reconsidering that.
now,
Well, we-
okay,
It's just going to be Steuer and Eck to move 2 to 1.
gotcha.
Those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried. Can I get C, approval of the minutes?
So moved.
second.
Motion by Alder Steuer, second by Alder Eck to approve the minutes. Any changes there? Those in favor?
Didn't see any.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 2, consideration with possible action on the approval of the master plan for Light Memorial
Thank you.
Park.
And I am just handing out the master plan that's in the agenda packet, so it's nothing in addition to what's there already.
Oh.
It's just sometimes easier to look at paper.
And it's in color. Nice.
So
Director, all yours.
Okay.
in 2005, the city constructed Light Memorial Park, and at the time, there was only enough funding to construct a portion of the master plan. So items such as a permanent stage and a shelter with restrooms were desired, but there wasn't enough funding to implement these and install them. So in that first page on the agenda packet, that's a master plan of what is current and existing, so it's the black and white image. So in 2001, the city council allocated just over $4 million in TID funding to invest in Light Memorial Park. So the funding was to go specifically towards dock wall improvements, sculptures, winter lighting, walkway paving, a permanent stage, and a shelter with restrooms. So the dock wall improvements are nearly completed, so if you go out there, you'll see all of the renovations nearly done. And that leaves about $3.2 million left in TID funding to put towards additional improvements to the park. So with such a substantial improvements to the park, we thought it'd be a good idea to actually revisit the master plan. Make sure that what's out there matches our needs, and if not, what would we do differently? So we hired ISG, they're a local engineering multidisciplinary firm located literally right across the river from Light Park. And they're responsible and under contract to create a new master plan and also create construction documents for phase 1 development, which are the items that I previously listed. So we first started out by putting together a review team consisting of several park members. The mayor, Alder Johnson's on that committee, along with several Broadway business owners and along with other board members from On Broadway. So On Broadway is going to take the lead on programming up the permanent stage with active events and activities within the park. So we thought it was really helpful to get their input on what the design is and what it should be, since they're going to be doing the programming for it. So ISG, they already completed 3 initial concepts, and as a design team, we reviewed all 3 concepts and we narrowed it down to the concept that you see in front of you. So if you look at, we can start going through these images, and I'll kind of review the concept with you in a little more detail. So you can see in this aerial photograph, it shows the highlighted projected project location. And it just simplifies things for you so that you can see what we're proposing to redevelop. If you go to the next page, there's a bubble diagram showing Light Park as a whole. So you see that the project location is bubbled out, and that's the same area that in the previous air photo was highlighted in a white bubble. And that is the current city-owned property. So we own that, we maintain that, we have jurisdiction over that property.
Which Which property?
Where it says project location
Okay.
in the bubble diagram map.
I assume that.
Yep, and then just to the north of that, there's something called short-term lease space. So that property is owned by the property to the north, which is Graymont. And we currently have a 10-year lease with them to operate that and use that area for park purposes. That lease is kind of nearing the end. We've already, we started that lease maybe about 15, 20 years ago. We already renewed it once over a 10-year span. Now we're to the point where that lease expires in the next year or two, and we've had discussions with them to see if they have any interest in selling. At this point, they don't. So we're still treating that as a short-term lease property, but they are willing to extend it another 10 years. So we'll be bringing that easement lease agreement back to the committee as soon as it's drafted and ready to go. But we didn't want to invest a lot into a master plan or into developments of that property because that could all go away at any time because we don't own it and manage that property. Then along the shoreline, along the Fox River, you'll see a strip of land right along the dock wall called long-term lease area, long-term lease space. That property is a 50-foot strip right along the dock wall where we have a long-term, I believe it's a 50-year lease with Graymont. So we have improved that area because we use that for various docks. We're hoping to get some cruise ships docking there in the near future, but we use that for the tall ship events and everything else. So we did previously invest significant funds into that long-term lease space, improving it. But for the master plan itself, we're focusing on the area that's bubbled out called project location. And if you turn to the next page, that shows the conceptual diagram and the revised master plan of what the committee as a whole really felt strongly that this is a great concept and we should hopefully move forward with this. So I'll kind of step you through some of the key elements to this master plan. So you see the parking lot to kind of the west side or the north side of the park. That parking lot is existing. So it's there. We have to keep that parking lot in place because it's also the access for Graymont to the north of the property. So they need that parking lot access so that they can get to their warehouses. So we really can't do much with that parking lot. So what's there is pretty much going to stay there as it is. But as a committee, we felt that it was really important to take a closer look at the entrance itself and maybe look at controlling that entrance a little better. Right now, I believe there's gates, but for the most part, they're open all the time. What we're proposing here, and that would be items, they're called 2, 3, and 4. Those are kind of gateway entry features, which is a more prominent focal point as you drive into the facility. But then we could also maybe sell tickets there or at least control access at that location. But those would be kind of formal artistic buildings of some kind and maybe a gateway arch is maybe how you could view that. And then the next really thing that we needed to figure out in the master plan is where would the stage go if we were to put a stage here. Where the stage currently is located is not an ideal situation, and Alder Johnson can attest to that, because where it is in the afternoon sun, the sun is setting right in the eyes of the performers on the stage. And so we've gotten a number of complaints in the evening when they're performing, which is typically when they perform. So it's really not an ideal setup. So it was really, it either needs to go to the north end of the property or it needs to go to the south end closer to the road. And as we looked at it, as a committee, we really felt that the best location for it was to the north edge where it's shown on this concept. Because for several reasons. One is we're looking at that permanent stage as more of an artistic statement piece architecturally. And so you'll really get tremendous views of that stage as you're crossing over the bridge. And so it really is a statement piece, or could be if it's designed properly and becomes a really artistic feature. And that would mean that you kind of sit towards the road and face towards the stage. And what that allowed us to do is really take a close look at the shelter that we'd like to build. So the shelter, if you can imagine what it'll be, its primary use is restrooms for the most part, because we do not have permanent restrooms in this park at all. We only have porta potties. So that's our primary focus. But then we also want to do like an enclosed rental space. Wouldn't be a very big rental space, it'd be kind of smaller, but we could really focus doing concessions in there, or maybe selling beer or soda out of a concession counter. So if you've ever been to the Botanical Garden, they built a similar type of building off to the side of their amphitheater that they built. You could kind of compare it to that. But it would be programmed a little bit differently, and the fact that we would see this as actual programming space, where in the winter months and summer months, you could actually maybe sit in there or have a meeting in there because it'd be a year-round facility. But what we really liked about having that in the location that it's shown right adjacent to the road is there is a grade change. So the road is higher than the park. So what that will actually be is we'll be able to actually very easily build a rooftop garden where we can have seating up on the top, which could be viewed as kind of the premier viewing location for the stage. Maybe we could sell that space, or it'd be VIP seating. And when there's not a stage or an event going on there, it's still a wonderful space because it would be elevated a little bit higher than the road. It still kind of ties into the Broadway district a little bit better than if that building were kind of set back into the park. It becomes kind of a building within the Broadway district versus a park building. So really a combination of those two reasons really set us up for this design as it's shown, with the stage where it is and the restroom with concession area where it is. Then as we kind of step through this master plan and the site work, a lot of it falls into, well, how does the circulation go? How do people sit? Where do they go? How do things relate to the waterway? You'll see that where there's number 12 listed, that would be an outdoor seating area, plaza space, where the public, could, sit there and eat or drink depending on how that concession stand is being used, but then they can also view the stage. And then item where 22 is listed, that would be kind of grass seating for the stage. Then there's a series of walkways that all kind of create a statement with kind of a curvilinear walk towards the shoreline and towards the stage. So, how that pavement is designed, it would really draw your eye towards that focal point, which is the stage. Then there's a lot of smaller elements in here, such as item 20 is a potential water feature that could be built right into or right adjacent to that concession stand. Where that would just be maybe a small little waterfall, just something artistic and creative, but it kind of adds to the ambiance of the site. In addition, we have several features, stormwater management features scattered throughout the site, which will be required if we redevelop the site. We have to incorporate stormwater management into this. And then when you get to the shoreline portion, what they're proposing to do is expand the docks that are there and really create a little better user experience for the docks than what's right there now. Right now there's just one gangway that leads down to the floating docks. This creates more of a space, and it's more of an experience as you're walking down to those floating docks. And then finally, the other big element to keep in mind here is you'll see under item 8, that is shown as a future pedestrian bridge. So for those of you who are familiar with the site, there is a railroad, an active railroad line just to the west of the site, which separates the old Titletown restaurant from our park. And that is an active railroad, so it is fenced, so that people are not encouraged to cross the tracks wherever they want. And the fencing causes a problem because people do want to cross right where that pedestrian bridge is located. And so occasionally, people do just jump that fence in that location. And especially with all of the residential condo developments that are going on just across the way there, we expect that that demand is even gonna increase as the housing gets developed there and people wanna walk to Light Park. Because they obviously wouldn't wanna walk completely around the fencing down to Dousman Street and then back up into the park. So we felt that we needed to incorporate some sort of an above-ground walkway over the parking lot for people to cross in that location. It's shown here, but it's one of those things where, maybe that might end up being one of the last things we fund in this park. We're not sure yet how that fits in with the budget, but we wanted to at least incorporate it into the master plan because there is a demand for it. It's just a matter of will we ever find the money for it? I guess that remains to be seen, and we'll go from there. Then I want to talk to you a little bit about the budget and the cost estimate for all of this. So I think I included a rough cost estimate in the agenda packet. It's not in this packet I just handed out. But it shows that if we were to develop everything in this master plan as shown, it would cost roughly $6.2 million. Of that, approximately $2 million is for the buildings, which would be the stage and the rental shelter with restrooms. About $580,000 for that pedestrian bridge that I discussed. And then about $860,000 for docks and boardwalk and improvements to the shoreline. I have to pull out my agenda packet because in my notes I'm missing a line item here. Just give me a second. And then about $2.8 million for site work and features. So that gives you the $6.2 million. As I previously stated, we only have about $3.2 million available in the budget. So how we're viewing this is we're going to build this in phases as our budget allows. So the first step in engineering is going to be to engineer what we can do within our budget. And the items that I previously mentioned with the stage and the building and a few other things that I mentioned are our top priorities for that funding. And then if there's additional money to do some site work or water improvements, we'll do that. Now, one thing that we're looking at doing is on Broadway has indicated that they're willing to potentially fundraise for a portion of this, some of the shortfall. So we are having active discussions with On Broadway to determine what that looks like. And right now, we don't have any set plans in place as far as what that fundraising goal would look like, what the timeline is. But as we continue to work through some of that, we'll be coming back to you with more information on if that's going to happen, and if so, what does it look like. And if for some reason it doesn't happen, we'll proceed with doing the phase one construction with what we have funding available for. So really what we're looking for, and I just have one more thing to say, and then I'll open up to Alder Johnson just to make some additional comments. But really what I'm looking for at this meeting is just approval for the master plan, saying you support the master plan, you like what you see, what I described to you matches your vision of it, and you think that this could be an exciting option. And we really have to get the master plan approved by Parks Committee and City Council so that the engineer can then take it to the next step and start the actual engineering documents of specific elements. We're really hesitant to start continuing work on that real detailed engineering if the City Council isn't supportive of the master plan and the phasing plan and budget as I presented it. So from there, I guess I'll open it up to Alder Johnson to maybe say a few things and add to what I said.
Thanks, Director. Welcome aboard.
Hello, folks.
Johnson.
So there was a great overview by Director Ditchite. Just a little bit of maybe additional context, particularly for those who weren't here when we had discussions around TID 5. So this is all really being driven by the closure of TID 5, which is going to have $5 million of surplus funding over the next couple of years. And I'm trying to remember when we did that, but essentially it was at the end of the year, end of 2021. We had to pass a resolution that basically dictated how that funding was going to be invested, and per the TID plan, it has to be invested within a half mile of that site, and there are very specific things that it can be spent on. And so of that, I know there was some shoring up the dock walls, which is what you're seeing, work that's already been performed. There was some electrical and lighting upgrades that were part of that, and then part of that. There was some. I think Parklet grant funding was part of that, some public art installations, but the biggest chunk of what you're seeing right now is specifically related to the park. So that is the $3 million-ish that Director Ditchite is talking about. So as he mentioned, you're looking at about $6 million overall total project. And so initially, when some of the TID 5 proposals come forward, one of the proposals for this park was a basic restroom facility that would service the needs of the park, which is desperately needed. As someone who programs events in that park regularly, I can tell you that it is a need. And this is when I came to Dan and we talked to council and RDA and said, hey, what if we could do some type of public-private partnership that could get us something a little bit more robust and a little bit faster than what the city could do on its own. And so that is what Director Ditchite is referring to when he talks about on Broadway doing some fundraising. So our board is committed to that. We are going to be doing a capital campaign launching this fall that's going to look at both the public market as well as this. We're going to do them both at the same time. And our board just authorized funding last night, or Monday night, sorry, we met on Monday night, for us to retain our capital campaign consultant to start assembling those materials and donor lists and all of that. So that is a process that is moving full speed ahead for us. And I can tell you, obviously Director Ditchite talked about a $6 million project, city having the capacity to contribute about half, which leaves half. And I think that it is understood that is the expectation that we would come to the table with. So for those of you not familiar with other campaigns that have existed in other parks, that is a very substantial investment from a private investment group. So, and we're willing to make that. And as part of that agreement, though, when we did that TID 5 resolution at the end of the year, one of the things that was contained within that is that On Broadway would come to this body, I believe by July, with a draft of a management agreement for the facility. So you'll see a lot of these questions answered, I think, when that management agreement comes forward, kind of expectations of city, expectations of On Broadway, and how all that'll look. So I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of context there and let you know that detail is forthcoming. But what Director Ditchite's looking for today, and what's really most relevant, is the site plan that you see in front of you today. As he mentioned, there's been a great stakeholder group that's been invested on this. ISG is a wonderful firm that has really facilitated, I think, a lot of different opinions sometimes, and has found a way to almost bring us to consensus, which I think is really hard to do. So you have about a half a dozen folks from City Hall, including Parks Department and the Mayor's Office, and about a half a dozen from On Broadway, including myself as a representative. So it's an equally balanced, recognizing that equal investment into the facility, and we all agree. I believe there's unanimous consent in the room that this is the right direction. There were multiple options. They typically come to you and say, do you like this option, or this option? And then they narrow it down. And so this is through a series of meetings, a lot of hard work, a lot of really smart people who understand this. And they've done a really good job with getting us to the site plan that makes the most sense, given a lot of the constraints on this site, including that easement from the new water line that takes out a big chunk of the park, obviously the easement for the parking lot that Director Ditchite talked about, and the access that you have to create for Graymont, in addition to not really owning the land on the north. So that didn't really impact our design decisions much. So at this point, you can't engineer, you can't drill down further, really, until we just have that preliminary concept agreed upon. And that's kind of what we're looking for today. Just say, yeah, we like what we're seeing, think you're heading in the right direction, or if you have feedback that you'd like us to incorporate, obviously we want to hear that and we want to incorporate that. There's probably just one area that Director Ditchite and I respectfully probably disagree a little bit, and that's the phasing. And the reason I bring that up is phase one, obviously from a parks perspective, is, hey, we want to do the stage in the concession area. I'm telling you that from a capital campaign perspective, I cannot raise money for sidewalks and stormwater management. I can raise money for a stage and a concession stand. So I think we have to find a way for these things to come together at the same time, and how that timing works. We all agree that we're still going to work on that, and I don't think that that's a definitive decision that has to come out of here today. But I do think that is a consideration that we want this body to really take, is how do those things come together so that we can ensure that the private investment coming into this park, so that initiative can be successful. Happy to take
Ready
any
for some
questions.
questions? I think Mark's got a page here.
Well, do you
Uh,
want
Well, we
Go
start with our
ahead.
elder statesman.
Maybe you'll
over
answer
here.
my
to?
question.
Well,
Yes,
we
the
can go
same.
back and forth. Thanks for coming down, Brian. There's a couple things here. We talked about the lease agreements.
Mhm.
Is the group satisfied with the way that's set up right now? That we're comfortable enough with the 10-year and the 50-year?
You really don't have a choice. That's being
Right.
driven by Graymont. So
But
we've
you're
done
okay
that.
with it as well as
Mhm.
can be expected with this plan?
Yeah, we had Director Ditchite reach out to Graymont and inquire if there was any interest in talking about a purchase before we went too far down this path, and at this time, there just wasn't. So those are the constraints we have. And, look, I like the fact that we have a lease because it still allows us to program and utilize that space. And so when you look at Light Park, obviously one of the questions that may come up is that it's kind of looking in the opposite direction of that field, and that's okay. When you look at events that are programmed in this park, and we program a lot of them, and participate in a lot of them, with a park that size, you need 2 stages anyway, if you're going to use the whole thing. So what this does, though, is it allows a really sort of intimate, and by intimate, I mean 1,000 to 2,000 people, this park can accommodate. And that's exactly what you want out of a site this size. By contrast, the Shipyard site is going to be intentionally designed for larger scale events, 5,000 to 10,000 people. And that'll be used predominantly with more temporary equipment, whereas this is equipment that stays in place and allows you to program it multiple times a week. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Brian. I got just a few more.
Mhm.
The TID 5, that's closing out, correct?
Correct.
And there's 5 million available, but you're looking for 3 of that?
well, that decision's already been made. So
Okay,
that
so
was
it's
done
not-
when that resolution passed at the end of the year, because
Right,
by
and
law, we were required to
I
do
just
so.
need to be refreshed on that
Yeah.
a little bit, so there's the money available. All right, was there any thoughts of any permanent seating at all here? I know you got the open lawn area, so we're just gonna go that route.
Yeah, we did not talk about permanent seating. I mean, obviously, that will add to the cost, and then you'd have to figure
Yeah.
out where does that go, but.
Well, I think at one time, there was some talk years ago of having a larger facility there,
Mhm.
on the river, concert venue, so to
Yeah.
speak. So considering what we have here, you feel this is the best option?
I do, and I see Director Ditchite taking notes, and we can kind of bring up that idea, with the group, and kind of see if that's something that can be incorporated and what that would look like.
Okay, as far as a number of folks that normally could gather there, is there any kind of crowd size that we're looking at?
1 to
maximum?
2,000.
How many?
1 to 2,000.
Okay.
Really, you're looking at as you can see, on the northwest part of that stage, that number 22, it gets blocked off a little bit. Again, those are the constraints of the set design. So those folks would obviously have a hard time seeing a concert on the stage from that angle. So that's why we say 1 to 2. You can comfortably get 1,000 in front of the stage. You can get another 1,000 off the side there.
Okay.
But that's why you're kind of in that range.
So the stage is set up so that the sun won't bother it as much? Obviously, we looked at angles and wind.
The new water utility easement is what creates the biggest obstacle for us. You have to have a 10-foot easement setback.
Okay. I'm good for now.
Thanks, Alderman. Alderman.
Okay, so you had mentioned the stage now. There really isn't a stage now. It's just where they put the portable one.
Right now, we just have pavement
Right on top.
in the size of a stage. So we have power to it, so you can easily hook stage equipment up very easily in the location. But it's not a formal stage, it's a platform.
Okay, all right. I just was like, make sure I wasn't.
To give you an example, when we program that space, we
Yeah.
actually bring in a stage and set it on top of that platform.
Okay, all right.
So we're still paying, right, to bring in a portable stage and to be able to effectively use the space.
Yeah, I've been there for different things where, that was all the way on the north end, filled in. Okay, so you mentioned private funders in addition to the city funds or the TID. So what does that look like? They don't have owning rights or anything, it's just a matter of,
That'll be defined in the management agreement when that comes forward, but you'd likely be looking at naming rights of some sort.
okay, that's what I wrote it up.
Yep.
Naming rights or what? Okay, so they would want some kind of naming rights.
Yep.
So it may not necessarily stay like Memorial Park, or maybe they would want the shelter named after them or something.
Yeah, there's a couple of options there. We did have the Parks Department look into whether or not there was a requirement to retain the name of the park, but I don't think we necessarily have to change the name of the park. It could just be naming of the structures themselves. So it could be naming the pavilion, naming the concession stand, could be selling of bricks and pavers, things of that nature.
Okay, and so my questions are kind of like, I think, could be for either one of you, I don't know, but the next ones, and could it be easily expanded if, say, we were able to buy the Graymont property?
Yeah, so obviously at that point, we would develop a master plan for that part of the property. We're hopeful that what we're designing now can easily be tied into that, in some way, shape, or form. So the consultant is cognizant that someday that might become permanent parkland. So what we're designing now really has to tie into that space, whether or not it happens or turns into something else.
Okay, and then the access to Graymont with the bridge over it, I don't know, do they have big trucks going back there?
Yeah, they do have semis that go back there, so we have to raise it high enough that they could get whatever size truck through that they needed. And so you can see on the master plan that there's a series of ramps that go up to get you to the top. So
Okay.
It's hard to tell what that is, but now that I explained it, it's probably obvious as you look at it.
And it has to be high enough for the trains too, right? So if it's
Oh,
high enough
yeah,
for the
yeah.
trains, it's high enough for the trucks.
Makes sense. Yeah, I love it.
And the
The whole
phasing
thing, I love
piece,
it.
so even though we might be swapped on phase 1 and phase 2, some of these other things can come later too, right? So when you think about the docks or that pedestrian bridge, those are things that can come when the funding is available. But having phase 1 and phase 2 in place right away, to me, is ideal, where those things happen simultaneously.
Well,
I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. I don't think we're in disagreement on the phasing plan. What I'm saying is, phase 1 will consist of whatever money is available at the time. And if the fundraising money is available, that becomes phase 1. And so I think we'll be able to work jointly
For sure.
together and
Yes.
figure out what phase 1 is going to look like.
I think phase 1 makes it usable right away.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what I see anyway.
Thank
Thank you.
Other, yeah.
I have a question.
Campbell?
That third part, I didn't burn that part off, but that's just an easement, that northern part with the 50-year.
The 50-year is just a lease. It's a 50-year lease.
I mean, how many-
Where we have ownership. We're
But
able to
there's
use
not
that for
enough
Alpha
to
Park.
like put parking, that's more probably gonna get used for dock space or something.
Correct.
So the stage wouldn't be part of that
No.
and viewing. So I added up just the seating there in front of the stage. I got 18,000 square feet that you have acquired there, not including the tables up to the pavilion, but I don't know if that's adequate for a couple thousand people. I guess my question with what's been going on lately, as far as emergency escape out of here in case something tragic would happen, does it give us enough to get out of there? You know what I mean, with the fence and such? I mean, this would be a place where something might happen,
And as part
And
of
with the river being on one side, that really creates a one-way event, And
as
that's
part of
kind of
the-
scary setup.
As part of the approval process for the design itself, before we were allowed to build anything, we have to submit a site plan for approval. That gets funneled through all of the different departments where they get to review it. The fire department does review all site plan submittals, and they do question things like that. Can we get a fire truck in there if there's an emergency? Are they going to be able to turn around? How would they do it? So if they have issues or concerns, we're going to address it with the fire department well in advance. But if they have additional concerns, it'll come up during the site plan review process.
It's a good question, a good observation. I can tell you that we do.
That's what fire, we're worried about safety or, some kind of a terrorist type thing,
Sure.
So-
And we do have some of those, we produce safety plans right now when we do events in the park, and we do have to address some of that. And in fact, even from the, when you have those unfortunate circumstances, right, you have to be prepared for them. There was some, the federal government agency, the Department of Homeland Security grant money that came in, and so a lot of the bollards and other things that you see in there are actually safety mechanisms that were put in with that grant funding years ago. But they're still in existence and won't be replaced or removed.
Then the only other thing I see possibly is, I'm sure a lot of boaters would maybe come up to here, probably just to use the bathroom, you know? Being that it's so far away, I see there's a proposed one over in the corner there. by the
Yeah, that would be
walkway.
kind of an auxiliary bathroom, and if funding allows, we'll build kind of a secondary bathroom in the northwest corner of the park.
And I suppose on section 11 there, you could still put a porta potty or two there.
Yeah, and for large events, we're still gonna have to bring in porta
Oh, yeah.
potties, because, you know, this restroom facility that we're talking about, we haven't really figured out the size yet, but maybe it'll have 5 stalls in it. So it's not gonna be a huge bathroom that will accommodate thousands of people at a time. It will accommodate, you know, traditional average use for a smaller facility, for a smaller event.
Yeah, and when we do events like Ignite Market or 4th of July down in there, I mean, we're bringing in 50 to 100 porta potties, so it'll definitely be a continued need.
Anything else, Alder Campbell,
No.
Alder Steuer?
Most of everything.
All right. Again, I like the plan. It's very nicely put together, and I know that there was a lot of time and effort put into it. Brian, I was just going to ask, as far as like the fundraising, you know, in a perfect world, you know, you'd like to see it happen fairly quickly. Do you have any idea or feel for time frame on something like this?
Well, I mean, the next couple of months is our feasibility study, feasibility for the campaign, and that doesn't talk about necessarily your ability to raise the money, but what does your messaging look like? And so that's the first phase, working with our capital campaign consultant, and then that will migrate into actual identification of your capital campaign cabinet, and then and then that turns into your donor recruitment. So we anticipate that the actual campaign will kick off sometime this fall, probably around August, September.
Okay. So
But
with
you know,
all
while
that
the
being-
preliminary work all occurs right now.
Okay. With all that being said, then, as far as completion of this plan, you know, there's a couple factors that go into play, fundraising and the TID and all that, but as far as looking at the plan, do you have any kind of an idea as far as a projected date that you'd like to see it?
Yeah, I think Director Ditchite and I have been talking about some different options, but we haven't nailed that down yet. And I think it'd be premature
Right.
at this
But
point,
just-
but, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But it is a discussion that we're having.
Thanks, Alder Steuer.
Okay.
Alder Eck?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, so is the building 5, the concession shelter with stairs, does that also have bathrooms in that?
Mhm.
Okay. all right.
That's the primary restroom.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay.
And I thought I picked up a start date, completion date, 4/1/23 to 12/1/24. Somewhere in the packet I read that.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
I don't know if that was in there or not. It was. We
Otherwise-
really haven't set those dates yet, so if it was in there.
Could be a
that was on
preliminary.
there.
You got the
Yeah.
master copy.
Yeah.
I did some
Nice.
copying.
I think part of that was set on what the consultant's contract stated as far as what the recommended schedule was, but that was prior to us having discussions with Alder Johnson on fundraising.
I only have, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm good.
I was just wondering, and maybe it's yet to be determined, but the Zachary Taylor statue. I didn't see it on here. Is it
That's still to
staying
be
in place?
determined.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Right
actually
now,
up further, I think, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, right now, we haven't, as a committee, we haven't really decided what to do with that, whether it stays or gets relocated to the museum or some other location. I know we've had those discussions in the committee, but we haven't come up with a final decision on that.
Leads me into my second question, which you already know.
Fort
what it
Howard.
is. What's Fort Howard, yeah.
Right.
So,
Back when I was on the Larson
yeah,
Green
we-
site. yeah.
We have talked about that.
Okay.
And, you know, and the thing is, Fort Howard was actually, was not located where Light Park is.
Right.
And so, as you may know, with the rail yard development, Elmore Commons has been dedicated as public space. And I've got some ideas around that I'd love to sit down and share with you. But we do got to get something up.
Okay, because I know, I know Alder Steuer and I have been hounding on it for years. I just don't want it to be lost in the shuffle, you know? It seems like it gets bounced back and forth between the Larson Green, which is on the rail yard site, and here at Life Park and back, and I don't want it to just years down. Well, neither site did it, now we don't have anything. And it could be really I mean, you've traveled a lot, Alder Johnson, and you can really do some neat interactive history things. And people who come to see a concert down here just to see the water can learn a lot and say, wow, I didn't know this was here. And it can
Yeah.
really be amazing.
Yeah, totally agree.
When you said Fort Howard, sorry, I just wanted to clarify, what were you meaning by Fort Howard? Like
The
to
the
put it by
original
Fort
fort
Howard?
The
was
original
right in
fort.
that area,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So it'd be nice to acknowledge that and teach about our history.
Mhm.
I would say in some respects, it's the oldest piece of Wisconsin property. You know, there's 7 different nations that resided at one time or another, 4 native tribes and then French, British, and English. So I think it's important that, we had talked about maybe possibly a half acre of land at one time, you know, just something. You could have kiosks, you could have different things that are there that talk about the history, and I think it's very important.
Mhm.
So,
And I can tell you, and at least with our organization, that is not lost. And even with the committee, we have actively talked about it.
So we'll definitely chime in, right?
Definitely, yeah.
There's a reason I knew what you were going to bring up, because we've talked about it.
I always do, I just don't want it to be forgotten.
So, you know, I would just kind of maybe close with one thing, and when you think about precedent projects, we've talked about, if you've ever been to the Leach Amphitheater, now that site's about twice the size of this one, but just to give you some perspective of how this facility could be managed and operated on the waterfront.
I just have,
Mhm.
when you talk about the shipyard project, I think that's in your district also.
Yes, sir.
On Broadway. Is that gonna compete with this, or is it just a different size? I don't know what the plan is for that, I guess.
Yeah, because that site is so much larger, the types of programming that you would do in Lake Park would actually just be so massively underscaled at the shipyard. You know, you could have
Okay,
200 people at the shipyard and feel like it was dead. So the smaller events, you'd still want to drive to this facility. Shipyard will be more primed for some of those larger acts.
Well, there's been, I mean, you had the hot air balloon
Mhm.
thing at Pullet Light Park, so there's been some pretty large scale things
Mhm.
there.
Yep, Tall
You
Ships
wouldn't
is
probably
another
be
big
able to
one,
do that.
4th of July.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, any other questions from the committee
Oh.
or director or, sure?
The gated, it says gated coming in, people wouldn't have to pay to come in, would they?
Not necessarily, but it would depend on the particular event and what the needs are. I mean, for the
Yeah.
most part, for a typical day when that park isn't being programmed, the gates would be open and people could come in and
Mhm.
park.
Okay.
It's just per the program, we might limit access or parking or charge for parking depending on that particular event.
Okay.
And there's a secondary purpose, and I will say, without a doubt, there will be ticketed events there, because that's the only way to make the pro forma work on the management of the facility.
Mhm.
But the secondary piece is that Dousman Street is obviously a busy street, and so when you have certain events where you don't want car traffic plugging that up, you want to gate that off so that your cars actually don't have access to it, so that it becomes more of a pedestrian experience. Now, that's not every event,
Yeah.
but for certain events.
Okay, I just want to make sure, I go there all the time, so.
Yep.
I want to be able to go there, so.
Oh, yeah, that's been a
No,
very
maybe I go
active
to
part
the
of the
park.
discussion. This is an open
Yeah.
park,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, anything else? All right, very good, thank you.
Good, thank you, folks.
Anybody else here for this item? Anybody else? All right, any other questions for staff? Anything else, Dan, you want to throw in? Okay. I agree with the phasing, if we can do it kind of more all at once, and kind of be dependent on how wonderful Brian and his group are at fundraising. Piece of cake,
Exceptional.
yeah, I don't.
I'll go,
Make a motion?
I guess before we make the motion, I would be concerned about the ownership of it being with the city. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like you mentioned the possibility of it not being, and the naming rights is one thing, but actually owning the property.
Now, this is city ownership.
Okay,
I think it would be just be a name, like.
Yep. And the management
Brian
agreement would
Johnson
define
Company.
how money flows in and out with sponsorship, naming rights, and things of that nature, but
Okay.
it would be city ownership.
Brian, then you're in charge of all the events here, or is it a shared thing?
Well, that'll all be defined in the management agreement.
Oh.
So to
Okay.
to come to you yet, yeah.
So
Yeah,
will
I
that come
think it'll
back
be
to
a
committee,
combination,
or
I
will that
think.
go to council?
Go ahead, Director.
Sorry, I think On Broadway will probably take the lead on programming, but Parks will probably do some programming along with that too. So, you know, the key is to activate the space as much as possible, and how we achieve that will work out through this management agreement.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve
Motion by Alder
Second.
Stoyer, second by Alder Eck to approve
the master plan for Light Memorial Park.
the master plan for Light Memorial Park. And any discussion on that? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Well put together. So we'll
around,
see.
Mark.
What's that?
Appreciate you bumping in.
He's
What is
sticking
that?
around, he's not leaving, is what he
You're not,
was
you're
saying.
sticking around?
You moved it up, but he's
This is
staying.
fun.
It's in person. We're in
Now he'll
person.
know what we're voting on, on Tuesday.
You have to get your committee to do this.
And everything, of course, that we do tonight reports to council
They have
in
to
2
come in.
weeks.
Yes.
2 weeks.
2 weeks from
June.
yesterday, so,
June what?
When we
Sorry,
vote
something.
city council.
something like that.
June 7th.
June 7th.
Number one, consideration of possible action and request by Alder Weary to install an ADA accessible walk at Colburn Park from the pool parking lot to the soccer field. I'm lost unless I have a Colburn item on the parks.
I know.
Well, this is something, to be fair, that I've talked to Director Ditchett about for years. I mean, just to talk about it a little bit, I used to play soccer there, coach soccer there, I still referee soccer there, and I see people, older people or disabled, can't get from the parking lot to watch their kids or grandkids down to the parking lot. And so just some way to make it easier, 'cause right now it's just kind of a flow, an outflow of the water that comes off the parking lot, right? And I know you know that, we've had that discussion, but I'd be curious to see what you have for us.
Yeah, so, this area does get a lot of use by the public, not just for the soccer games, which are almost a weekly, or a nightly event in the summertime. And people have to walk from the parking lot, which is here, to the soccer fields, which is here, and it's not ADA compliant, and there's no walkway to it. And so it can be difficult for somebody who's mobility impaired. And so the other thing, though, besides the soccer games, is that area is used for cross-country meets. And if you've ever been to that park during a cross-country meet, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. That park is jam-packed, and that where that soccer field is the primary start and stop locations for the race. So everybody has to get down into that space, and you have hundreds of people going down there. So it's also problematic on those events also. So the only downside to installing a walk in the location as shown in the map that I provided is it's going to be a fairly expensive walkway to install. So we haven't completed a detailed engineered estimate yet, but preliminary estimates range in the cost of about possibly $50,000 to put that walkway in. So the cost just to do the paving would be about $25,000. That does not include the cost to do the regrading, because you can't just pave it at the existing grade. You have to slope it out and bring in fill to get it ADA compliant. And then with that amount of site disturbance, you'd probably have to cut down a tree or two in order to do that. And then in addition, if you disturb over X number of square footage within the park, you have to do stormwater management. So then that's the cost of hiring a consultant to actually design some stormwater management feature, and then that gets added to the construction cost too. So it's not a simple project to do, but it's not a terribly expensive either. It's just a matter of with that funding, when's the right time to request it, and are there other priorities ahead of it? So right now, the only potential funding source that we would have to do a project like this would come out of the bond money that we bonded last year for the reconstruction of the Colburn 9th Street parking lot. So we recently, last year we bonded $200,000 to repave that parking lot. We recently got the bids in, and the bids are a quantity basis, so we're not going to know the total cost of that project until it's actually built, and we take quantity measurements as they're building it. But preliminarily, we're thinking that we will have enough money left over in that project that if you wanted to make this a high enough priority to use that funding, we could potentially build this walk next year. The funding, or the parking lot, isn't going to get built until August or September, so we're not really going to be certain we have enough funding for this walkway until the parking lot is done. Other than that, we don't have any other available funding for this. We could save a little bit of money by not paving it and do kind of a crusher dust gravel walk instead. That could maybe be saved $20,000, but there's maintenance issues with that too, because you have a gravel surface that weeds creep up on. So I would say on a yearly basis, maybe even several times a year, we'd be spraying Roundup along that to keep the weeds off of it. If you have a big storm event, you might have washout of the gravel into the turf area. So there's ways to save money if you need to by not paving it. but there's additional maintenance that comes along with it. Now, if you want my opinion as far as whether or not this is the highest priority within our entire park system for putting $50,000 into an ADA accessible walkway, I would say that there probably is higher priorities within our park system, but I do think that this is a high enough priority that it's worth discussing, and I would support using that money for this project if that's something you wanted to proceed with.
Thanks, Director. When are the bids coming in for the?
Well, the bids already came in, but we didn't, they're kind of quantity costs, so we're making some assumptions as far as how much quantity of gravel we're gonna use, how much excavation's gonna be needed, and we're really not gonna know until we start removing the asphalt and we start building it as we go. But we're thinking it'll cost anywhere in the range of $130,000 to $150,000 when it's all said and done. But I can't give you the exact number because we did not. It's a contract, part of a bigger DPW contract, so it's just a part of a bigger project, let's say.
When do you think we would know that? Not till August?
We're not gonna know until construction occurs and we can actually take measured quantities. But like I said, construction is in August through September, and after that, I'll be able to give you an exact dollar amount. But our numbers, our estimated quantities are showing it be in the range of 130 to 150,000.
And I think I appreciate you bringing that up because the council did allocate $200,000 towards Colburn. I mean, we did think it was going to be all for the parking lot, and I appreciate council seeing that as a priority instead of some of the other things that were on there. I think it would be fine if we hold this item until we know the cost of that parking lot and then bring it back and inform us. It's going to be technically already paid for with that money. But Alder Steuer?
I was just going to add that, you know, we were talking about fundraising on the last issue, about fundraising possibilities, maybe some of the neighborhood associations, you know, that might be something, some grant monies, whatever. You know, a lot of times with the project, you know, when the city puts up some money and such, you know, if another group can come in and fundraise along with it, that really bodes well.
Well, I will say, as having
Just a thought.
fundraised
Yeah, we've
$1.5
done it.
million
You've
for
done your
pools,
share.
only to have the $1 million turned down, I'm pretty sure the Colburn area is not going to want to fundraise for anything for Colburn Park.
And I do want to mention also that, you know, even going off of what Alder Johnson said, a lot of times it's easy to fundraise for a specific amenity.
Yes.
It's hard to fundraise for site work and walkways. Usually that's much more difficult to do. Not impossible, but it's more difficult, so it's just something to consider.
I mean, is it really, you know, I haven't walked back there a whole lot, but I've been in the park quite a few times. Is it kind of a safety issue as well? You just said that for folks that are disabled, it's very difficult. It's grass, it's trees, whatever.
You go from a parking lot
Trees.
to a field, and from here to here, it's
It's a slope.
It's steep.
it's just open ground and grass and rocks
You
and
could get hurt.
yeah, I mean, I've seen grandparents and I'm struggling to get down there, so we have a great park. We should fully utilize it. And if we have some money that we're not going to spend, why not use it for this? I think it's something we can wait till the end of summer and see what comes back and make a decision at that time. There's no rush, but
Oh, it definitely would,
Can we wait?
yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to get it on an agenda because I can. I've talked about it for so long, I thought, you know what, it doesn't get done unless you bring it up and ask. And I
My
would
biggest
encourage-
challenge is finding a parking spot in there. Just saying,
You
it's so
know-
packed, guess what, we've done soccer, I'm a soccer mom.
Well, hopefully, we're hoping the new parking lot, which is excellent on the other side by the ball diamonds, will help. You know, you'll just have to come in a different way. But we looked at
The
expanding
long-
this parking lot, but the loss of trees was pretty substantial to expand this one, and the best choice there was to build the other one. Remember, we marked it off, we walked it out and saw how many trees we had to cut down. It was fairly sizable. Well, I'd make a motion just to hold this item until the bids are in for the upper parking lot, so we can see what monies might be left.
I second that.
So no decisions until we find out if there's any money left. Second by Alder Eck. Any discussion on that? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Thank you. Let's get some low bids.
You just pushed out your own project, that's the whole thing.
Well, like I said, the bids are already in, it's just a matter of what the quantities are.
That's what I meant.
So,
Yeah. Details. Details. All right. Number 3, consideration with possible action on the approval of a resolution authorizing applications for grant funds to assist with the Lake Memorial Park Improvements Project. Director.
the city recently applied for a DNR stewardship grant for $1 million towards the construction of Light Park Master Plan improvements. So it's the same project we just spent some time on reviewing with you. One of the requirements of the grant application is that the city has to formally adopt a resolution in support of the grant application. So you'll see that resolution in the agenda packet for your reference. If you look at, and then along with the resolution, I included some support documentation of the actual grant application itself and how we worded it and what the dollars were, specifics of how it was broken down. So you'll see in the support grant documentation that we list the total construction cost of $2.7 million, with the city funding $1.7 million and the grant funding $1 million. Now, that's different than what we said before because, we told you that was a $6.2 million project. The reason we did that is because, first of all, the fundraising isn't completed yet, so we didn't want to rely on that for a grant application. But more importantly, the DNR stewardship program only funds certain elements. They don't fund every park amenity out there. So we were very selective about saying, okay, if we were to get this grant, the total project for 2.75 or 2.7 million, along with the funding that the DNR would put in, is very specific and tailored to what they would fund as part of their grant program. So all of the stuff we knew they wouldn't fund, we just kept out and we said, we'll do that at a later date, or, it's not part of this grant. So that's why the dollars aren't the same and what the difference is. So, and when you read over the resolution, it simply states that the city council supports the project and that you recognize that city funding is required as a match to the grant if it's awarded. It doesn't actually commit the city to approving the funding. It just shows that you recognize that additional funding is necessary. But in this situation, the funding's already been approved as part of the TID, and so no additional funding is needed. So, there aren't a lot of questions or comments as it relates to the budget on this particular grant itself and the resolution.
Alder Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. Dan, I was just gonna, as far as this $1 million grant request, like I said, is there any kind of time frame on something like that, or it all depends on?
It depends on the grant itself. Usually it takes the DNR about 6 months to award the grants, and then they have a very specific timeline for when you can build it.
So we're looking fall, that.
Well, I think it'll be fall before they even award it, and then we have to see what the terms and conditions are to the grant contract. And so if we receive this grant, the city currently has 3.2 million. This would add another $1 million to the pot
Okay.
if we receive it.
All right. That's
If
all.
we don't receive it, we
More
still
to
have
fundraise.
$3.2 million.
Brian's really rooting for it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm interested in a motion to approve.
Second?
Was that
You're
a
asking
motion?
for a motion?
Yeah, I was asking. I'll entertain one.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Oh, I thought you were saying
Yeah, I was just
your motion
entertaining.
to approve,
He's
okay.
entertaining.
He did last.
I will
time.
second.
I skipped that one.
Sorry.
No, that's
Oh,
okay.
yeah, that's right, he's the
Motion
chair.
and a
He
second
doesn't
to
do
approve.
motions.
Generally not, unless it's Colbert related. All right, those in discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, consideration with possible action on accepting a $10,000 donation of grant funding from the Nature Conservancy to fund habitat restoration efforts along the East River Greenway corridor.
The Nature Conservancy received a $40,000 in grant funding from a program called the Fund for Lake Michigan. So the funding is intended to be split between various municipalities in the Green Bay area within the East River watershed to implement native plantings and address stream bank stabilization and erosion. So the Nature Conservancy has been working with park staff City of Green Bay and the town of Ledgeview and the village of Alloway on identifying shovel-ready projects that can be implemented or engineered within the 2022 calendar year, which is required for this funding. So the goals for the grant funding include improving habitat for pollinators along the river, improving water quality of the river through nutrient and water uptake by plantings, improving aesthetics of the riverfront and the East River Trail, reducing municipality park maintenance costs, and then finally supporting East River intermunicipality planning project development and new funding opportunities. So that's in essence the mission of the grant and what the funding has to be spent on. So if you approve accepting this donation, park staff would continue to work closely with the Nature Conservancy to select the appropriate projects that meet the intent of the grant. We haven't selected the projects yet. And of the 40,000, 10,000 of the funding has been dedicated or earmarked to go to the city of Green Bay to install native plantings along the East River or do other similar type projects. And the hope is that the plantings will be in places where they could supplement, expand, and fill in gaps in already existing natural areas or new areas, particularly if it enhances the river bank protection and or stormwater infiltration. So the funding covers the cost of the plants and the cost to install them. So one of the projects that we're considering and having discussions with them on is native plantings in a biofilter area along the East River Trail expansion by St. George Street, where we're looking at doing the East River Trail expansion project kind of by Webster Avenue. In addition to that 10,000, there's another 10,000 designated to be used for both Green Bay and Ledgeview for stream bank stabilization. So we don't know at this point how much Ledgeview would get and how much the city would get of the second $10,000. It's kind of dependent on which projects are selected. So the stream bank erosion project would include engineering, design, and permitting, to put in a project at a later date. So we might even be able to do some work in Baird's Creek because that is within the East River Greenway watershed. So we may be able to look at some stabilization along the creek. So I'm looking for a motion to just accept the donation of up to $20,000 in grant funding from the Nature Conservancy. And then if you approve that, we'll then work internally with them to select the projects.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, well, I just want to clarify, because it says 10,000 on here.
It said 10,000 when the agenda packet was put out.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of the second 10,000, so that's why I'd like the motion to say up to 20,000, because that second $10,000 will be split between Ledgeview and the city of Green Bay, depending on which project selected. And there's a potential that we might not get any of that second $10,000.
More the better. We have a motion by Alder Steuer to approve.
Yes.
Or second?
Second.
Second by Alder
Campbell.
Campbell. We keep wanting to say Stevens.
Well, that's Steve
I
and
know.
Campbell. Oh,
Okay.
it throws you off.
Those in favor?
You
Aye.
say soup.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Holder soup.
Alder soup.
Yes, so
I can do that. Consideration with possible action on the request by Wisconsin Public Service to approve a 12-foot wide utility easement at John Muir Park. Director.
So WPS, or Wisconsin Public Service, approached us and with a request to do a 12-foot wide easement. If you look at the agenda packet, you'll see not only the easement language that's there, but you'll also see a graphic that shows where the easement would be located. And this would be located on the north side of the park and also the east side of the park, following the right-of-way in both locations. The reason for the proposed easements is because currently they have overhead electric in those spots. So along the east side of the park, the actual overhead line is right on the property line between the right-of-way and the park. On the north side of the park, that overhead line is actually across the street on kind of following the residential properties. They would like to remove both of those overhead lines and bury the utilities within the easement. And by doing so, they're proposing to move the overhead utility from the opposite side of the road to the north onto park property to the south side of the road. So as part of that, the reason that they're proposing to bury it is kind of twofold. One is the utilities, the overhead electric is 60 years old, so it really needs to be replaced anyway because they're having problems with it. It's dated and they need to upgrade their facilities. Secondly, because of the large amount of trees that are in that area, when there's storm events, they have a lot of incidents where they have down power lines because of branches falling on those overhead lines. And so there is a significant number of power outages in the neighborhood because of that. And by burying these utilities, they can avoid that. So that's what the request is for. One thing to note is they will have to install probably several transformers within this easement. So I think they initially told me 3 transformers throughout the entire easement, and these would be 3x3 above ground cabinets. In addition, they have to install several 1x1 pedestals. So these would be kind of posts sticking out of the ground. So there'll be several of those located within the utility easement also. And then finally, they did tell me that there's a cable company, and let me see which one. Charter Cable will be also installing upgrades to their facilities within this easement if it's proposed, and they will likely also have a few pedestrian pedestals also on top of what WPS is doing. So if the city doesn't approve this easement, they do have other options, but they're not as desirable options. So option 1 is work with adjacent property owners and put the easements on their property. They would still need the same number of transformers and pedestals. They would just be not on park property. The second option is they could look at putting these facilities within the right-of-way. There's utility easements within the right-of-way. Today I had a discussion with Jim Burnett, and I think the desire from Public Works is that that right-of-way is very congested already with existing utilities. And allowing those utilities to go into that location would just kind of compound the congestion issue and would cause issues down the road when we want to replace our own facilities within the right-of-way. It's just, 2 more utilities you have to work around. And keep in mind too that if these utilities were put in the right-of-way, they would still need the same number of transformers and pedestals. They would just be closer to the road instead of offset from the road. So those are the various options. So at this point, the law department did review the easement. We have no changes to it. We're supportive of the easement. From a park standpoint, I'm supportive of this request. We oftentimes grant WPS or Wisconsin Public Service and other utilities easements within the parks in order to just maintain and upgrade their facilities. So by us allowing it to happen, we're providing a service to the public and allowing WPS to provide that service
All right.
better than they do now.
Thanks, Director. Alder Steuer, then Alder Eck.
Just a quick question. Looking at it, it seems like that would be the best option. I'm just looking at the surrounding homes around there. It looks like there's almost 20, maybe 22 homes. That would be quite a project trying to cut through all those areas. And I don't know. I could see that being a bit of a nightmare. So just looking at it now, I think I agree with Director Ditchite. I think this would be the route to go.
Thanks, Alder. This is your area, right?
It
Alder Eck?
is
Okay.
my neighborhood, so
Yeah.
I want to comment, and I've lost power many times. So I've worked hard to help WPS get this word out in our neighborhood, at our neighborhood association meetings and things. So I'm definitely in support of it. We do have a lot of trees, and we've been without power overnight. So, yeah, just wanted to put my 2 cents in there.
And I
Thank
do
you.
want to point out that WPS will be boring the lines in the location instead of trenching. If you look at the air photo, you'll see that there's a large number of mature trees right in the easement location. So by boring it, they'll be able to save all of those trees for the installation.
Yeah, and they did explain that to the neighbors about it.
Do you want to make the
What?
motion, Alder Eck, your
So,
area?
if I
He
can.
gave me 2 cents.
Just helping out.
I make a motion to pass that
And I'll
as
second.
listed.
Motion by Alder Eck, second by Alder Campbell to approve. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Number 6, consideration with possible action on the purchase of parcel 21-1979-3 near the intersection of Main and Elizabeth for the expansion of Bear Creek Greenway.
So if you look at the agenda packet, you'll see a graphic showing the parcel that we're proposing to purchase here. Approximately 15 years ago, the Parks Department installed a portion of the Bear Creek Trail from Main Street to Henry Street. And if you're familiar with this trail, it's in a highly urbanized industrial area of the city that was previously developed before we put the trail in. So at the time when we put the trail in, the city did not own any of that property where the trail is located. So we worked with the various property owners to either purchase the property or purchase easements from the property owners, allowing us to install the trail in the location it's currently situated. So for this particular location and this parcel that we're talking about, the property owner at the time did not want to sell the property to the city. They wanted to maintain ownership of it, but they were open to selling us a permanent trail easement. So at the time, we paid nearly $33,000 for that trail easement. That went through committee and council for approval. We bought the easement from them and then we installed the trail. And that happened in 2004. A few years later, the property ownership changed, and in 2016, the new owners came forward to the Parks Department and asked to donate this parcel to the city because they didn't want to pay taxes on it because they're not using it, the city's using it. It did go to committee and council, and they approved accepting the donation in 2016. But after it went through committee and council, the owner backed out of it and said, well, I decided not to donate it after all. So that never happened in 2016, even though it went to committee and council for approval. After that, the property changed a third time, and what happened at that point is the property owner, the property owner at the time, the third owner, stopped paying taxes on it. So it went into foreclosure. So currently, Brown County, through the foreclosure process, took ownership of that piece of property. That was finalized in the last few weeks, so they do have ownership now. So for a cost of $889.11, the city can purchase that property from the county and it will become city-owned property. And that dollar value was calculated because that's the past back taxes that were due. So instead of the county eating that money, the city would pay the back taxes as the purchase price of it. That's a pretty typical way of foreclosure and the process that it goes through. And with foreclosed properties, the city always has the first shot at buying a foreclosed property that the county owns. So we're the first people they've come to see if there's an interest to buy it. If the city doesn't buy this property, they'll continue with the foreclosure property and offer it to the general public to see if they want to buy it. And that's the process if we decline purchasing it. So I would recommend at this point going ahead and approving the purchase. We do have enough money in our bond acquisition account from previous projects to be able to fund this dollar amount. So I would recommend approval.
Questions?
I'd just like to make a comment on it. I took my dog and my wife on a little bike ride through there last weekend, I think, over to the Dairy Queen. It's a very nice little area. It looked like it was cleaned up even a little bit, a lot of trimming along the way there. I don't know who did that, but
That's the city, so
I
we,
even thought
Parks
maybe-
Department maintains
I
that
don't know if that
trail.
would be like a picnic table area. The only thing I thought about it as we rolled through there, I mean, there was some people here and there, a couple people fishing the creek and whatever. There's a little bridge that goes behind there. I mean, it's pretty isolated back there. I wonder a little bit about the safety part of it. That's about it. But it looks like I kind of figured they did a lot of the trimming just to open it up to make it safer. That's what it looked like. But it's nice blacktop through there and everything. It's a very nice little ride.
It's a nice trail. If you haven't been there, it's really
Yeah.
kind of a unique area of the city.
I've been on
check
it
it
twice
out.
already, yeah.
Check it out.
You're a trail.
I'm a trail.
I'll just try.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you went back there and took a look. I'd like to check it out too. And I think one of the goals that we have in the city, a lot of us are looking at connectivity of trails. So, I think this will help with that overall plan. Do we, and I suppose we have a map or something that would show the trails that we do have and proposed, et cetera? Do have
Yeah, we
something
can
like that?
either, I can share that trail map with you.
Yeah,
but we do have
maybe
it all
bring
laid
that
out.
to our next meeting. I'd like to see it.
There's billboards that crosses Maine, that's a little tough to get across there, that's about the hardest part there. And then it goes across over East River to Joannes Park. And then it hooks up back and goes back the other way, or hooks up at the East River Trail, goes all the way out to where we were just talking about. So yeah, it's a nice little setup there.
Want to make the motion? I'll entertain it.
I'll make a motion to pass the number 6 as written, or add the purchase, I guess is the,
All right.
I'll
Second by
second.
Alder Eck, second by Alder Campbell, to approve the purchase of parcel 211979-3 for the expansion of Bear Creek Greenway for $889.11. Discussion? Those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? That carries. Number 7, consideration with possible action on modifications to the fee schedule for the new banquet hall meeting facility at the Wildlife Sanctuary.
So in 2019, the Friends of the Wildlife Sanctuary built and donated a new banquet meeting rental facility, which is connected to the existing nature center. So I'll give you some bearings of the property that we're referring to. We recently hired a Wildlife Sanctuary events coordinator to work 20 hours per week to promote and assist with running and managing this facility. Since that person was hired a few months ago, our rental bookings have dramatically increased over what they were. So she's doing a good job right now. And as part of her job, she's been doing quite a bit of research as to what other facilities are charging and, fee structures that they have in place. And we're getting a lot of requests to maybe look at our fee structure a little bit differently than what we originally laid out in our budget last year. So typically at budget time, we set all of our fees and charges, and we make any suggested changes at that time during budget. So when you look at the attachment, there's 2 different spreadsheets. One shows what was approved at budget time with our budget and fees, and then down below is kind of what we're proposing to do. And all of the items highlighted in yellow are kind of the proposed changes to our fee schedule that we'd like to make. And all of these proposals make it a little bit more flexible for potential renters and will hopefully bring in more rental revenue than how it's currently set up. So I'll just kind of touch bases on a few of these changes. So the first one that's highlighted in the uppermost column is, or row I should say, is to clarify what our daily rate is for the meeting of the banquet room and the meeting room for Sundays. So we have a new line item in there with a dollar amount stating what it is for Sunday. It just wasn't clear before because the meeting room and the banquet rooms were separate costs and you had to do the math yourself. So really the fee structure for that first row doesn't change, it just clarifies things. The first change that we really made though to the fee structure is we're proposing a discounted rate of $3,000 if someone wants to rent the entire weekend from Friday through Sunday for the entire banquet facility. So if you do the math from what we originally had in there in our fee schedule, it would cost them about $4,100. We're proposing to do it at a discounted rate of $3,000. The reason that we're doing that is we're getting some requests to rent for the whole weekend. But the fees structure, nobody really wants to pay that much for the whole weekend. But there is a benefit to the city by renting it to one person for the whole weekend because we have less staffing. We don't have to go in there and change setups. We don't have as much staffing and cleanup that we would normally have if we had separate events on those particular days. So we feel that we might get actually more rentals by offering that discounted rate for an entire weekend. Secondly, what we want to do is we want to offer half rate discounts. So you can rent the facilities for half a day for half the rate. But we would be very selective on doing that because we would only do that for events that are very short term. So maybe something that's 2 weeks out. Typically, when somebody rents this facility, it's long-term. They're booking it out 6 months in advance or a year in advance because there's so much planning that has to be done. By offering this discounted rate where you only have a few weeks to do the planning, we know that probably no one else is going to rent that facility because it's very short duration. So at least by proposing, half rental rates for these half days, it's not a half rate for the full day, it's a half rate for a half a day. We're hoping that we can bring in more revenue that typically somebody wouldn't have used that space anyway, so at least we're making some revenue on it. And then if somebody still wanted to do a short-term full-day rental, they still have that option, paying the full rate. And then the final thing that we'd like to create is a rental fee for just the caterer's kitchen. We never had that in our fee schedule before, so our rental rate for that, we're proposing $300 per day or $150 for half a day. And again, this would be kind of as needed, and it'd be a real short duration, because what we would hate to do is rent the kitchen out a year in advance for only $300, and then we can't rent the main room because the kitchen is booked. So again, we would only allow this on a case-by-case basis, and only if we're very certain that it's not, the rest of the facility isn't going to be rented. So what we're hoping is these proposed changes would allow us flexibility in generating additional revenue on the days when we know nobody's going to be there.
Thanks, Director. Questions? Alder Steuer?
Yeah, thanks, Director. So we've had this now for how long? A year and a half, maybe?
I think in probably 2019 is,
Okay, so
maybe 2020 is when it opened up.
Do we have a number as far as amounts of money we have brought in so far?
We can generate that, I don't have that here, but I will tell you that initially we relied on word of mouth. And so we had, a few press releases where we announced that we're officially opening. We gave tours and had a press event out there. It was somewhat successful, but it kind of petered off, and we just, those rentals stopped coming in. So that's why we took the step a few months ago to hire somebody whose sole job duty is really to promote this facility, advertise it, meet with people, go to different conventions, such as, there's always a wedding there's a wedding event at the new conference center across from Lambeau Field.
Right.
I don't remember the name offhand. But she attended one event there, and we actually received several wedding bookings from her attending that event. And so now it's picking up quite a bit, and she's also looking at different ways to program the space. So we're getting creative. So we're looking at maybe running our own events where we could sell tickets to create some additional revenue
So
out there also.
the monies that come in then, that goes into the general fund, or it goes to your budget? How does that go?
It goes into the general budget as income.
Okay.
Here with the Director.
Yeah.
Everybody'd want to take it for that, no?
Okay.
Alder
Good.
Rick? Any other
Just
questions?
one question.
Alder Gamble?
Director, so where they have the polling station, is that considered the meeting room then?
That would be kind of the banquet facility, yeah. So that's the larger space.
That's the larger space? Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
So that, on that fee schedule, that would be called, that's the banquet room. The meeting room is kind of a smaller room off to the side with some partition walls. So, but where the polling is, that would be considered the banquet room.
216 people.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Alder,
Yes, oh,
just make a comment. So all of that sounded good with the exception of one of them, and the half off for half a day, 2 weeks or less. I mean, to me, it gets so complicated to understand that I don't know that it will actually be effective. As someone who used to rent venues for 4 to 6 events a month for 10 years, I can tell you that the industry normal standard would be that you would actually charge a premium for late reservations as opposed to a discount. Because if someone's calling you 2 weeks in advance to rent a space, it's because they're desperate, they need something, they want something, they will pay any amount to get it. So it just seems odd to me that we would give it to them at a discount. So just feedback for what it's worth. I'll let the committee do with that what they like, or let Dan respond to that, but that to me just seems like something that would be kind of counterintuitive to what you normally see in the marketplace.
Director, did you have any, is this what the person we hired recommended, or?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
James could probably
I
speak
can
on
comment
that.
on that, and that's a really valid point by Alderman Johnson. I think typically as we go forward, this is gonna be, I will say, kind of an evolution of what this ends up looking like over the years. But right now, we're getting a lot of requests for somebody that maybe wants a Saturday. And they say, you know what, I'd really actually like to prep everything on Friday, but I don't wanna pay necessarily full price on Friday. And they also wanna maybe even rent Sunday, but they don't wanna pay full price on Sunday for, because they wanna come back and maybe do their, if it's a wedding, they might do their gift unwrapping on Sunday. But what I'm trying to say is like, they would be willing to pay half a day on Friday to come in and prep everything on Friday, get everything set. But then they wanna come in on Saturday and just go to their event instead of
Okay.
prep on Saturday morning.
Yeah,
We're
that's
getting
a
a lot of
little different
requests
than
like
what I
that.
was thinking.
It's a little bit different perspective than what you're saying, but I understand where you're coming from too, so.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was kind of like a rider, if you will, to add on something if it's available, which
So-
is totally different.
Yeah, and we are getting a few, and it's not just 2 weeks out, it'd be more, even within a month out, or even 2 months out, 60 days out, where, instead of turning down a possible reservation or having something else in there, then we could at least get half the revenue instead of leaving it vacant on a Friday night or a Friday.
That makes more sense, thank you.
All director?
Oh, well, and looking at the chart, I see that it's the kitchen only that would be 150 for a half day or the full day. It doesn't have another one on here, or well, on the bottom, dividing, see, rented or charged. Maybe rented for half a day at half the daily cost. But my thought was, when you made the comment, that it's kind of a chance to fill it because it's not filled. So you're getting you're getting that coming in. So that, I guess I look at it as, well, it's better to get part of the money than not a thing at all.
That's how we were looking at it.
Yeah.
Well, and as you said, it's an evolution. If we find there's great demand for those half days, then we'll just pop it up later. Entertain a motion or other question? on
Just,
that?
just a 10-second question. As far as, Director, as far as the amount of rentals and that, is it usually fully rented during the year, or, I mean?
Not yet. I mean, right now, like I said, prior to hiring this new individual a few months ago, we only had a few rentals
So,
over,
it's
a
just
2-year
going a lot
period.
better right now.
So it's headed in the right direction.
Okay.
And we fully intend on programming it as much as we can and renting it out. And at some point, we might have to look at turning that part-time position into a full-time position if we're successful with that. But then the revenues from that building will be able to fund that full-time position. But for now, we're not there yet. I mean, it's still sporadic, but we're doing a lot better than we were 6 months ago.
Okay. I'm good, thank you.
Entertain a motion?
I entertain a motion to modify the fee schedule for the new banquet meeting hall facility at the Wildlife Sanctuary as listed on the schedule.
All right. Motion by Alder Eck, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Alder Campbell, any discussion on that? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, informational, staff update, seasonal staffing levels for pool, summer playgrounds, and Bay Beach amusement park. All good news, right?
We'll see. So, as you know, we've been talking about this for 2 years now. Seasonal staffing is a big issue for the Parks Department and everyone as a whole. We are not isolated in the problems that we're having. So really today what we're going to focus on is our discussions as it relates to pools, as it relates to our summer playground program, and as it relates to Bay Beach Amusement Park, because those are the things that, people just need to know, well, which pools are going to be open? Are all of them going to be open? Where are the summer playground programs going to be located, and how is Bay Beach affected? Our other staffing issues are more maintenance related and really don't affect the public directly with the programming for these spaces. So that's why we're just going to focus on those. So we'll start with the pools. In the agenda packet, I've included a very detailed description on the history of our pools, our staffing history, what we did at budget time last year, which was, give an increased pay raise to the lifeguards of about $1 an hour. And then in addition, the city council allocated an additional $20,000 for additional bonus pay for the lifeguards to help attract people to the lifeguard industry or to our pools specifically. So I list here what the specific bonus pay plan is and what was set up for that. And then we'll talk a little bit about where our current staffing levels are for the pool. So for Colburn Pool, we need 12 lifeguards and 8 attendants in order to operate that pool. For Resch Aquatic Center, we need 15 lifeguards and 16 attendants. And for Joanne's Aquatic Center, we need 20 lifeguards with 16 attendants. So to run all 3 pools for the entire season, we would need a total of 47 lifeguards and 40 total attendants. Where we're at right now is we have 35 lifeguards and 20 attendants. So as you can see, we do not have enough lifeguards to open all 3 pools at this time. But we're doing much better than we were last year at this time, which is encouraging. So what we are proposing for pools this year is to open Joanne's Aquatic Center and the Resch Aquatic Center. In the past, the last 2 years, we've opened Colburn Pool and the Resch Aquatic Center, and we were not able to open Joanne's because that's our largest aquatic center that needs the most number of lifeguards, and we just couldn't do it the last 2 years. So we're very excited that we have enough lifeguards to open the 2 pools that takes the most amount of staffing. So we're in good shape, but we're still not there yet. So Colburn will be open for swim lessons, and it will be open for swim team practices. So, already I think the pool is pretty much filled. We're still working on maintenance. We're trying to get that facility open along with our 2 aquatic centers. And there is a potential that Colburn Pool could open to the public for open swim if we're successful in just getting a few more applicants and lifeguards. So I'm not saying no to Colburn at this time, but I can't commit to it at this time either. We're real happy with where we're at with the lifeguard numbers, but we wish there'd be a few more. Let's talk a little bit about, let's lead into the summer playground program now. With the summer playground program, a little bit of background and history for the New Alders. So prior to this year, we had 32 summer playground programs allocated in our city budget. But because of staffing levels the last 2 years, we were only able to staff 16 locations. So although we budgeted for 32, we could only fill 16 because we just couldn't find the seasonal staff to run the program. In last year's budget process for this year's budget, the city council amended the budget to reduce the number of sites to 16 sites. So officially this year, we only have enough money in our budget to fund 16 summer park playground locations. And the thought process here is there was concern with budgeting that much money for a program that we can't even fill the staffing needs anyway for the program. So that's the initial reason why it was temporarily reduced. As the seasonal staffing shortages maybe fix itself over time, we can reconsider as a council and a park committee whether or not we want to increase it back up to the original amount or find some place in the middle or keep it at 16 sites. There's also a thought process and a desire that maybe we should reimagine the playground program, and instead of doing it the same way we've been historically doing it, maybe you reimagine the program and look for alternate funding sources. So maybe we can keep the 16 sites as it is, but maybe figure out a kind of a different type of playground program for the other sites. And to date, we haven't put together any proposals on how we could achieve that, but we're going to work on it. So right now, in order to run the 16 sites we have budgeted, we would need 32 playground leaders and 10 sub-leaders for when people take vacations, along with 2 managers. Currently, we only have 20 playground leaders hired to date, with 9 subs and 2 managers. So with only 20 playground leaders, we usually have 2 playground leaders at each park. for safety concerns. We really don't want to have one person there by themselves because there's a lot of issues that come up throughout each day that you really should have 2 people there. So that means that with our current staffing levels, we can only operate 10 sites this year instead of the 16. We're hopeful we'll get some more applicants, but to be truthful, usually these applicants are college students. Not all of them, but the majority of them are. For the most part, college is done or nearly done for most people, and college students already have their jobs lined up for the year. So, I mean, realistically, I don't see us getting a large number of applicants moving forward beyond what we currently have. But if we do get more applicants, we will add to the number of locations that we provide. So I do have a list in here of where the selected locations would be for the 2022 park locations. And you know, there's always a question, how did you select those locations when you're looking at reducing the number of playgrounds? So what we did in this situation is we had 16 locations last year where we had sites. We looked at which sites were the top 10 as far as attendance goes. And in this situation, the top 10 sites that had the highest attendance also had the same number of east side sites versus west side sites. Plus, they were pretty evenly dispersed throughout the city, so you didn't have 2 sites right next to each other. So for this proposal, we are proposing to select the 10 sites from last year that had the most attendance throughout the entire summer. So that's how we ended up with the location. So the 10 selected parks would be Marquette, JFK, Mather Heights, Astor, Fisk, John Muir, P.T. Pride, Red Smith, Fritch Park, and Joannes Park. If additional park locations do come up because we get additional staffing, we will look at doing Seymour Park, Eastman Park, Colburn, McAuliffe, Beaumont, and Wilder. And we would do it in that order. And again, that order is somewhat selected by the number of attendance last year, but it's also going alternating from west to east as we get additional staff. There are 3 parks that we're proposing, I believe 3 that we're proposing this year that were for alternate sites that were not on the list last year, and I believe that's Seymour, Beaumont, and Wilder, is that correct? So those would be the 3 new sites that we would propose. Historically, those sites always did very well, and some of the sites last year just didn't do so well. So, like for example, Tank Park, you know, historically, that was a site that had a lot of demand for the summer park program, but the school implemented a wraparound program which severely had an impact on how many kids come to our program. So there were a few sites that, we didn't put into contention and a few more that we brought in, but, we kept Eastman, Colburn, and McAuliffe on the list because those did fairly well, but not as great in attendance as the other parks. So that's how we came up with those. And our criteria, like I said, was equal number of east-west locations scattered throughout the city, past participation attendance numbers, and then looking at what amenities and shelters are included within the sites also. And then finally, I'll just give you a brief update on Bay Beach Amusement Park. So in order to operate the entire park at the schedule that was originally presented last year for the 2021 season, we would need 80 full-time seasonal ride operators. We currently only have 61 ride operators on hand. And obviously we're looking at hopefully hiring more as they come up, but ride operators need to be over 18 years old. So we're kind of pulling from the same college student pool of people, and it's really hard at this point to find new people to apply for those. In order to operate with the schedule that we had originally listed, we have to do a shift change. So we would need X number of employees for part of the day, and because we were advertising we would be open for 11 hours a day, we would have to shift change with more ride operators and have, accomplish it that way. Because we don't have enough ride operators to do the shift change, we now can only be open for 8 hours a day. And so if you look at the revised schedule, I did include that in the agenda packet. The first schedule shows what the original advertised hours were. The second schedule shows the revised hours, showing that we have to go down to an 8-hour day just simply because we don't have enough ride operators. This schedule is on our website currently, and it is being advertised through social media. And so people are aware of this, and we're hoping that, we'll get the word out by bringing it to Parks Committee also. This item was put on the agenda as informational only, because typically for these decisions as far as which facilities we're gonna run, that usually is not a city council function. The function of the city council is to provide funding and give us some general guidance, but then it's up to staff to figure out the day-to-day operations of how that's going to work with the resources that the council provides us. So we tried to take a very educational approach to this and do it to the best of our knowledge with, trying to keep the facilities open as much as we could. So I guess from there, I'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Director. Bill Steuer.
Okay, thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask Director Ditchite, just going back to the park locations, the 10 parks. With those parks, you said you're going to do things on social media, just getting the word out. I would think that folks will be, driving from other areas of the city to go there. They'll be fully aware, or try to make them as aware as possible of these locations that'll be on the website.
Yeah, we'll update our website accordingly and, advertise where these summer park program locations will be.
I figured you would do that. Okay. All right, that's good.
Thanks. Questions?
No questions. I'm glad to see John Mears on there from a selfish standpoint, but I'm guessing that these all have, I'm not familiar with every one of them, that they have shelters. So that's
Yes,
probably
they all
part
have
of it.
shelters and with restrooms.
No parks are mine, but Old Bay Beach, I guess.
Yeah, that counts.
That's a big one.
That's a pretty big one. Yeah, well, I'm sad to not see Colburn open. I'm glad it's open at least for the swim lessons, and the swim teams. And, the last 2 years, Joanne's hasn't been open, so
Right.
we should get it back open again. So
Yeah.
I understand there's an east side. So thanks for dealing with, it's better. I mean, it's not worse, so that's good. I mean, it's unfortunate with the hours at Bay Beach. I'm sure that's gonna hit us in the income part, unless we get the same amount of people in a small amount of time, but.
Yeah, and so,
Pretty
pools
busy
are
park.
better than last year. Playground program is worse than last year. And, we are continuing to have problems with our other seasonal staff job opportunities. So I think at budget time, we will have to take a closer look at our seasonal salary pay scale citywide, not just for park facilities. I know other departments such as Public Works are struggling to find seasonal help. And we are also on other end, other sides of the park department, such as our maintenance crews. We're down quite a number of seasonal employees.
Yeah, I would encourage you, look around the state, around the country, see what others are doing that's working, and I'm sure the council, the committee and council would be receptive to ideas, because we have such great assets that we need people to run them. It's just a mind-boggling thing. I know my daughter's friends, one's a parkie and one's on the Forest View crew, so I'm about tapped out for college kids.
No, I've been promoting it, I can tell you that.
My kids lived there for many, many years. They walked from my business down to there. They fed them lunch. They came back at the end of the day. Mom picked them up, took them home. They were safe. That park was packed, busy. They used to serve them lunch, so I didn't even have to feed them. Do they still do that?
We still do
Wow,
that. The
that's
school
nice.
district does.
It'd be nice to see that open again.
I'm trying my best. I got 5 kids coming up back here.
Guess where they're gonna be working?
First one is working this summer, so
Okay.
trying
Yeah.
my best.
Dan, did you say Seymour Park was first? on that
Seymour
list?
Park is first on the alternate list.
Thank you.
Yes.
We'll push for it.
We just need 2 people.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Comes in pairs.
With the sub.
Yeah, so be creative, push as much as you can, and we'll support you, you know. If we have to compete with the surrounding communities, let's compete. Let's bring our A game. All right, thanks. Entertain a motion to receive
Motion
and place on
to
file.
receive and place on file.
Motion by Alder Steuer,
Second.
second by Alder Campbell. Discussion on that, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next Parks Committee meeting is June 22nd. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Director's report.
Oh,
Oh,
Director's report.
I was just gonna say, I
jumped
thought
right
there was
over
a
it.
report.
I
That
wouldn't
was
wanna, I wouldn't
It
wanna
seemed like
short
a
you.
report, but,
Well,
oh, wow, he just pulled out a
You
big
got,
book.
oh, we'll give you the next hour.
take a,
Thank
take
you.
a, take a little
I
break.
do.
You want another one? I'll
Thanks,
You
Anna.
know what, I will.
Thanks.
Although, can I look at it, are you gonna go through it?
I'm not gonna.
Okay,
No.
then, that's fine.
We'll read it
I have
out
one at home.
before I go to
I have
bed
a couple
tonight.
first.
Yeah, these are excellent.
So,
Yeah.
for director's report, the only thing that I have to add other than what's in here is, this is a copy of our park recreation and open space plan. We update this plan on a 5-year basis. Because you're a new committee, I just wanted everybody to get a copy of this for your reference. We use this to secure grant dollars from DNR, so without this, keeping this plan up to date, we don't qualify for stewardship grants. But really, it's a good planning document so that you can see where our parks are, what amenities we have, and what are we proposing to change in the future. And Alder Steuer, you mentioned a trail map. There is a trail map in here, so it's there for your
Look at
reference.
that, it's even
So,
full of.
I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director. Any other items to report?
No.
No?
Thank you, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to receive.
Oh.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Okay.
And I'll
Motion-
second. I'll second.
Motion by Eck, second by Steuer to receive and place on file. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Now, can adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Eck,
Second.
second by Steuer to adjourn. Those in favor?
That's right.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
motion carried. We're adjourned.
Okay.
Can
Thank
I have
you, Director.
Thank you. I need 20 seconds to get,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah,
what?
get the head.
Before we
Yeah,
move to the.
because
Oh, wait, I have to leave the meeting. You have to remember to leave the
Yeah.
meeting, right?
Dan, when's the last time parks took this long?